All right, good morning, everybody. We left off last word of the first line. Sechas Nazir. So Daf Beis, and away we go. Kol kinui nazirus kinazirus. Any kinui of nazirus is just like a statement of nazirus. We saw this kinui nadarim by the initial beginning of last Masechta. But so it says there, any nickname that's used for nazirus, even though normally the that which one says is Hareini Nazir, but he uses a kinu, which the Mishnah will explain as several different kinuim. So that has the same status as if he says Nazir, and therefore becomes a Nazir. And Hareza Nazir. One says, right, he makes a statement, right, that he will be, right, I will be, right. So then he is a Nazir. So this is actually not an example of a kinui. This is actually an example of a yad, right? Yad. We also saw in Mesechus Nadarim. We saw over there that it's yad is a handle. Knows even though he only makes a half statement, doesn't make a full statement. But you can see from that which was said, or you can see what he was referring to. If one says he will be noed, right? He will be beautiful. He will be handsome. That is referring to perhaps growing out his hair, and once again he will become a nazir. That's an example of a yad. Now, what are the examples of kinui? So if he says Hareini Nazik or Naziach or Paziach, Harez a Nazir, that would make him a Nazir. Hareini Kazeh, if he says I will be like this, right? And the Gemara will explain as to what we're referring to. That is also, or Hareini Mesalsel, he says Mesalsel, Hareini Mechalkel, all right, so those are also cases which the Gemara will explain. Hare alai l'shalech pera, right? So he says, I will go ahead and basically, grow out my hair, grow out my locks. Hare zen nazir. These are cases of nazir, right? A nazir, by the way, we didn't mention yet, right? Someone who's forbidden from wine. He also forbidden to go ahead and bring a razor or cut his hair. He also has to remain tahor. So those are the main things by nazirus. So all these will qualify as a nazir. Harei alai tziparim. If he says, "Behold, upon me to bring birds," so Amir Nazir, that means he's going to be a nazir, which is concluded with some bird offerings. Yeah, the nazir. He's not a nazir. We have to explain what the machlokes is between Rameir and the Chum. Bye. Zak, the Gemara, by the way, also takes time to get used to doing the Rashis instead of the Rans. It's like the opposite sides, not right. So Zak, the Gemara. Satan, my time in Tani Nazir. We're talking about we were in Nashim, and all of a sudden we bring this by Nazirus, right? Nazirus is a lot like Karbanas. Why is it stated over here, right? Why isn't it stated in Nashim? So my answer is Tani Nazir. My time in Tani Nazir. So our answer is Tani Akrai. It's going up Psuk, and the pasuk says Vayam im loitin say in timsa chen beinav kimatzabai ervas davar. So if a man finds something wrong with his wife, he finds that ervas davar, right? He finds that perhaps she committed adultery, and he wants to go ahead and divorce her. So the pasuk was there brought by Git, and he gives a request of Sefer Krisus, right? So it says what causes this woman to go ahead, or the adulterer to go ahead to do the avera of Arais? That is yain. The kamar kol aroya saita b'kalkula. One who goes ahead, and let's say he goes ahead and he brings, this woman a sota, also involving a rayas, a suspected rayas. Anybody who saw a sota, right there, the parshas right next to each other, will bring himself to nazirus, right? Become a nazir. He says, if this what happens with wine, I'm going to ban myself from wine, and I'm going to say that not just swear sobriety. He's going to go ahead and basically swear to nazirus. Fine, period.
I would have thought they would have said,
yeah, the Durham, right? Yeah, I also right, yeah. So I think
then it should have actually come after.
So I think right.
Sota.
So I think some of the Taisus deals with some of this right here. Fine. Also, it brought the pasuk from Gittin It didn't bring just to bring the Chazal, right? Which it says, when the Smichos Parshios of, but the fact is before. All right, fine. Anyway, because we didn't do Sota yet. The Taylor sort of makes sense. We just did Sota, and Sota should be first, and then right.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Right. So right. Anyway, so the Gemara says, but that's the Gemara. We don't have time for all the Taisadim. So Pasach b'kinoi. So it said over there, kol kinoi nazirus, right? Any kinoi, right? Any sort of nickname for nazirus is valid. And then Umafarish Yados, and all of a sudden, what's the first case? I give you an example of a yad. What's going on here? You say kol kinoi, and then you talk about yados. So some say in the row, some say others are stam chasurim echser. Our mission is missing a part. It should say kol kinoi nazirus kinazirus. As stated, should say any kinui, any nicknames of Nazirus, just like Nazirus. The yados Nazirus kin Nazirus. And a yad of Nazirus, a partial statement of Nazirus, is just like full Nazirus. So then it goes into what are these of the yados? Harez and Nazir. And then it says, okay, the first example of a yad, he says, will be, that is a Nazir.
Wait, what's the difference between a yad and a...
Yad is like a half statement. I will be. He doesn't say, I will be a Nazir. He says, I will be. And then we interpret it as I will be a Nazir. A kinui is a person says, instead of saying Hareini Nazir, he says Hareini Nazik, right? A word that is used, right? As a machlokes as to whether it's Lashon Bnei Adam or Lashon the Chazal gave, right, to do it. But either way, that's a kinui. So the Gemara wants to know why. So really, then it starts to explain the others. So the Gemara says, I believe for kinui v'reisha. I understand. You say, all kinuim are like kinuim, right? Kinuim work and the others work. So start with examples of kinuim. Why do you start with kinui, yad, and then you explain the yados first, and then you go back to the kinuim? Why'd you do it that way? So tanami out the saleh kubafarish bereisha. No, because we normally what we do often is that which we finish off with. In other words, we said a kinui is like a kinui and a yad is like a yad, and since we finish off by saying a yad is like a yad, how mafarish bereisha, then we start explaining. Okay, and here's the examples of yados because that's fresh in your mind. Because it's not. As we'll see in the following three Mishnayos, right? So those who are Ashkenaz prayer daveners on Friday nights, right? You say with what oils can you go ahead and be malik? And there's Shabbos, Lincoln. Which ones can you not use? Umafarish, Ein Madlik and Bereisha. Then it says, okay, it goes in the ones that you're not allowed to do. So once again, so it starts listing the ones that was the last category. And similarly, the Mishnah over there by what you can do hatmana, right? Insulation on Shabbos, right? It's not a violation of cooking. There's certain ways of hatmana. There's an add heat. So with what can you do hatmana and what you cannot do hatmana? Ubefarish ain't time to bereisha. Then you go ahead and explain what you cannot go ahead and do hatmana with first. And similarly, what is she allowed to go ahead and wear it out, right? What adornments can she wear it out to consider to be wearing and not carrying? And then it starts with the second category listed of Bama Eina Yaitza. So the owner says, wait, that's the rule? I thought now we go to the Mishnah. I'll give you two other examples. What can an animal go out with? In other words, that's not carrying for you. Right? And what is it considered to be attached to the animal? And what can it not go out with? Umafarish, yaitse gama bereisha. And it says, okay, a camel can go out with so-and-so, which is the first category. So over there, you start explaining the first category first. And similarly, right, we have another case of four categories. Yesh, neichlin, manchilin. They're those very, very basic relationships where one inherits and one bequeaths to that same individual. There is a relationship of neichlin v'loy manchilin, those who inherit, but they don't bequeath that individual, or manchilin v'loy neichlin, and one bequeaths and doesn't go ahead and inherit, and loy neichlin v'loy manchilin. There's the ones who they don't inherit from that individual, and if he dies, that individual does not go ahead and inherit from him. Umefarish, and which one does it explain? Eila neichlin manchilin bereisha, and it goes with the first category first. So I understand. So sometimes you start with the first category, and sometimes the last one. So why in our mission do we start with the last one? So Elo Yelim, Tani Haki, Tani Haki. Really, it could be both. Elo Hassam. In the first three examples, the Isuri Nafshehu, we're talking about him doing an Isser, i.e., that which he lights on Shabbos, that which a woman can go out with on Shabbos, and that which one can do installation on Shabbos. Those three things are an Isser Legabi a person. All right. So Hasan Yisur Nafshe Mufaresh, Yisur Nafshe Beresha. Therefore, we're going to go ahead and warn you what not to do because it involves an Isser with a person's body. Gabi Behema, however, the case of what can an animal go out with or inheritance, excuse me, Gabi Behema, I did the Behema with us, since it's only talking about the Isser of an animal, so therefore we'll start with what it can go out with. We're not going to warn you as what not to do first. And Gabi Yeshnechlin, and the case of inheritance, now if our Sheikh Nachla Beresha, the main Nachla is one who goes out and inherits and bequeaths back and forth. So that was the relationship that was explained first. So if that's the case, so why in our case did we choose the others first? So over here in this case, why don't you do kinu first? So tam, what's the reason? Yadais hoyel v'asim drasha, since the way we know yad is through a drasha, right? As we saw over there, it's through by my nedarim, right? It says there's a hekesh over there between Nadarim and Nazirus, right? Nazirus says but Yadas Nazirus, so to by Nadarim, right? There's a drasha back and forth. Therefore, it's chaviv. Therefore, the whole limud of Yados is chaviv, is dear, is precious, and therefore we'll start with that one first. So Gemara says, okay, I have an idea. So we have to remember Beresha. Okay, so why don't you start off and says Yados Nazirus Kinazirus, Kinui Naziras Kinaziras, and then start with the others because that's your drushas. Satana ki maskil maskil karban. When we go and we begin, so by doing a kinui, right, is the main part of Naziris, right? When a person goes and obligates to be a karban, right? Hareini Nazir. So Hareini Nazir is just like Hareini, Hareini Nazir. Right, as I say, nafiach. Right, I don't think that's the proper term. Right, nazik. Right, person says nazik. That is ikar naziros. So since it's telling you ikar naziros, let's start with ikar naziros before yados, which are only right half statements that we assume that is referring to naziros. So therefore, we'll start with that. Maskal beikar karban. However, when it comes to explaining mefarish yados beresha, that will explain yados beresha because it comes from a drasha. Fine. Two dots. We're in Beis Amud Beis, I don't know, around 6 lines from the top. If one says, I will be, then he becomes a Nazir. So the Gemara says, well, why is that true? Dilma ayebetanis. Maybe it means I will be in the fast, right? I'll be someone that's going to, maybe he's being Makabala Atanis. Kamar. Samar Shmuel, Kegoin Shahaya Nazir Iver Lafan. Says Shmuel, right? So no, we're talking about a case of a Nazir is walking before him. He's talking to his friend or whatever it is, and he says, hey, yeah, I will be. In other words, we can infer, right? It's implied from a statement, right, that I will be just like this individual, this Nazir who's walking in front of me, and nothing to do with the fast. So over the front. So let's say Shmuel holds Yadayim Shemechichas Lo Havi Yadayim, right? That Shmuel holds Yadayim that are not. Right, if you make a half statement, that's not so apparent. It's not lo havidayim. It's only in this case where a Nazir is walking in front of him. But in a regular case, though, Nazir walking in front of him wouldn't work. So that what are you saying that yados, a half statement doesn't work? But we see we know by Shmuel that he holds in Maseches Kedushin differently, right? That we can imply from a statement, right? If you know, say Mekudeshes Li, he says Harei Mekudeshes, right? That it's still implied to him, and therefore Yadayim Shemechichos is Yadayim. So I'm going to say no. When a Nazir is walking in front of him like a lisfuke, there is no doubt. So therefore, that's the reason why it works. Aval, right? I think the takes out the base here. The Bach takes out right. Aval vat or take out the vat. About Ada Nazir over lefanav, but there's no Nazir walking for him. Amrino, we say Dumaya betanis kamar, but Dumah lefaitim in a kabanasam kamar. Right? Then it's a 50-50. Maybe it means tainus, maybe it means nazirus. So therefore, there's no way of really labeling his statement. It's not a fact that it's not an issue of the Yadayim Shemechichos Avadayim. Is that normally if it's only right, if it's a half statement, so we know we can assume. But if there's a 50-50 chance it's referring to something else, then we can't possibly say that it should work for Nazirus. So the Gemara says, maybe when he says, yeah, right, I shall be. Maybe he says I shall be responsible for this Nazir's karbanos. Right? Maybe that's what he means. So when he says no, so it says the Kamar Belibo, he says afterwards in his heart, that he was thinking, I'm going to be a Nazir. See, Haki, if that's the case, Ma'ila Meimer, what's the Chiddush? So what would you have said, maybe just like he's thinking, I'm going to be a Nazir, then he has to go ahead and express it explicitly, and therefore that'll be the case. So Kamash Malan, he does not have to go ahead and do that.
Why is it possible for another person to bring a Nazir's korban?
He paid for it.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh, just-
he's responsible. It's right. He will go ahead and donate them. It's like it's like a pledge, right? A person pledges. You can pledge whatever you want. You don't have to pledge, right? Once you pledge, you're now obligated to go ahead and bring. So it's an obligation. If I pledge something to the Beis Hamikdash, they can force me to go ahead and bring, right? It's not like you pledge
Yeah,
your.
The Nazir has a responsibility to bring. The
Right.
korban was at the end.
Correct. But there's no assuming that he's responsible to pay for it, right? Right, but I hear your question, right?
So the question in my
So I can't say I put on phone for you. Yeah,
Question in my limit is, you're saying the Nazir was a Vadai walking before him, what's the finish?
right. So the finish is, even though he says no, but then it goes the other way. It says maybe doesn't mean Nazirus. Maybe he means karbanos, right? So it says no, he was referring to when he was thinking about karbanos. So he's thinking about, when he's thinking about becoming a Nazir. So he's thinking about a Nazir, what's the Chiddush? So the why is a big Chiddush because you don't have to say it. As long as you're thinking it, even though he made a half statement. Right. So that's the Chiddush.
That's the Teres.
Right, that's Teres, right.
My limit was possible. Okay, I get it.
Right, the my member was
It's so obvious.
right. But I didn't think it was obvious because we're saying it's so obvious because he was thinking it. Why should it be in other ways? The finish is that you might have thought maybe if you just think it, it's not good enough. Right. So Gemara says, right, that was a case of actually where I thought the Havmin was stronger than the Kamash Malan. So the Gemara says, a person says, I will be noah, right? I will be handsome, right? Growing out your hair is handsome. Maybe it means I will beautify. I will be handsome in mitzvahs. I will beautify mitzvahs. And how do you beautify mitzvahs? Kedatites the Brisa. Is that Keli Ben Veyu? I said, right? I will be a no lefanav the mitzvah, right? In other words, I will make mitzvahs beautiful. I said lefanav sukkah na. I will make a beautiful sukkah, a lulav na, or a lulav that's beautiful tzitzis na, or echtav lefanav sefer Torah na. All right, a sefer Torah that's beautiful. And then wrap it and put a nice gartel on it, made of silks, right, and a cover. Samar Shmuel shetafis bisara. He says, "I will be beautiful while holding his hair," referring to I will grow out my hair. The Omer as and now Nazira milsa de avera. I understand. He says, "I will become beautiful." Nazira is milsa de avera. And now he's calling it beautiful, right? Well, we know that Naziris is sometimes called an avera, as we'll soon see. So why is it not? How can you possibly describe something as Noah as referring to Naziris, which is a chayta? And we see, well, let's just get to the 2 dots on top. So the says, yes, actually, there are times where Naziris is beautiful, and there are times where one is a chayta. How so? Rabbi Eliezer covered the Omar Nazir chayta when he's called a Nazir as a chayta. Hani mili gami Nazir Tameh. That's only by Nazir Tameh. A Nazir Tameh guy is a Naziris for 30 days, and he comes Tameh in the middle, so he has to go ahead and start his count all the way from the beginning. Just as Hani mili gami the ID the boy the mistar. Right, he has to go ahead and redo it. Those will fall away. They don't count. You can't just pick up where you left off. You already did 9 days. You don't start from day 10. You start from day 1. Right? See, over there, since he has to start over, he's adding more days to a Naziris. That's why it's called a chayta. About Nazir Tar, but one who simply does 30 days, lav chayta karibe. He's not called a chayta, and therefore, such a case could be described as I will be beautiful. All right, we'll stop here. We will continue from here. Everyone have a lovely day and drive safely.